So in this video, we're going to learn how to add fractions together. And what we learned already was how to multiply and divide fractions, but adding fractions is a bit more tricky. I'll show you in a few later examples how it can be a lot more tricky. The first one's not so bad. So 1/4 or 1/4 plus 2/4 or 2/4. Here's the basic rule. We can only add these two fractions together if they have the same denominator. So 4 and 4 are the same number, so that means that it's safe to add the two top numbers, 1 and 2. So 1 plus 2 is 3 over 4. Now 3/4 is our final answer. So as I just mentioned, this only works if the two bottom numbers are the same, and here they're not the same. We have a 4 and a 2. So it's important to be able to change one of them so that, or maybe both, maybe change both of them so that they have the same denominator. What are the rules for being able to do that? Well, you can multiply the top and bottom of a fraction by the same number. Let me explain how that works. Let's say we have the number 2/5. Now, for whatever reason, if I wanted to, I would be allowed to multiply both of these by some number, as long as I multiply them by the same number. So 2 times 3 is 6, 5 times 3 is 15. And that's kind of what we did when we reduced a fraction, only instead we would divide both numbers. So if I wanted to reduce 6/15, I could divide the top and bottom by the same number, 3 in this case. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So these are some tools that we're allowed to use. You can multiply the top and bottom numbers by the same number, or you can divide the top and bottom numbers by the same number. Oops. Now that I mentioned this, let's be very careful to never do the following things. We are not allowed to just add the same number on top and bottom. This would not work. Same thing with a subtraction. We are not able to just simply subtract both the top and bottom numbers by something. You'll get a completely different answer if you do these. It is okay to do with division and multiplication, but please, please, please never do this with addition or subtraction. So with this in mind, let's think about a way that we can make these two fractions addable, make it possible for us to add both fractions together. I'm going to draw my attention to the second fraction here, because if I were to multiply the top and bottom both by 2, and we said multiplication was allowed, if I multiply the top and bottom by 2, this then becomes, and I'll write it down here, 1/4 plus 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4. And now this is okay. Now we can add these because they have the same denominator. So the final answer, we add the two top numbers, 1 plus 2 is 3, and we just copy the bottom number, 4. A lot of times I'll see people make this mistake where they say 1 plus 2 is 3, but then 4 plus 4 is 8. But this is not correct. We have to just copy the denominator. Don't change the denominator when we add the fractions. Here's another example. So sometimes it's a little bit tricky to find a common denominator between the two of them. For example, is there some number I could multiply to 1 into 5 so that it turns our denominator into a 7. Well, that might not be so easy because, 5 times 2 is 10. That's already bigger than 7. So that's not going to work. There's a strategy though, and it involves multiplying all of the numbers. So take the first fraction on the left, multiply both the top and bottom numbers by the second denominator, so the 7. So 5 times 7, 1 times 7. And on the second fraction, multiply both top and bottom by the first denominator, which is 5. So if you follow what I just did here, this should work every time, because the first fraction, 1 times 7 is 7. 5 times 7 is 35, plus 1 times 5 is 5. 7 times 5 is 35. So the strategy that I just showed you is great because every single time we'll see the same answer for the bottom numbers, the two denominators. And why did that happen? Well, that's because 5 times 7 and 7 times 5 are the same thing. The order does not matter when you multiply. So as long as there's a 5 involved and a 7 involved, they both will make 35. All we have left to do now is just add the two numerators. So 7 plus 5, and copy the denominator. 7 plus 5 is 12. So our final answer here is 35. 12 over 35. This next one, we have a number that's not a fraction, but we can very quickly and easily turn it into one by putting it over 1. Now we want the two denominators to be the same. The easiest way would be to just multiply this by 2 and this by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6 over 1 times 2 is 2, plus this fraction did not need to be changed because now both denominators are 2, so it's safe to add the two fractions together. 6 plus 1 in the numerator and copy the 2 in the denominator. 6 plus 1 is 7 over 2. So 7 over 2 is our final answer. Last one. What if we wanted to add 3 numbers together where there were some fractions involved? Well, step 1 would be change this number into a fraction. Make sure they're all fractions if you're doing this. It just makes life a lot simpler. Now we have to think of a common number some number that you can multiply 8 into and you can multiply 7 into. And of course 1 has to go into it, but 1 goes into anything. Let's start by multiplying 8 times 7. Now, why did I pick 7? I'm looking at this 7. If I multiply the 8 by 7, I have to also multiply 1 times 7. So what's 8 times 7? That would be 56. Let's run with this idea. So can I multiply something here, 7 times something, and get 56 as well? Well, yes, we can multiply by 8. So 7 times 8, and up here you have to do the same thing, 1 times 8. Now 7 times 8 makes 56. 1 times 7 makes 7. 1 times 8 makes 8. And we still have to change this fraction so that the denominator is 56. So 1 times 56 will make 56. And that means I have to multiply 2 times 56 up here, which makes what would that make? 112. So let's combine all of this. I'll write it a bit more simplified underneath. So the numerator in the first fraction was 7. The denominator was 56 plus 8 over 56 plus 112 over 56. It's safe to add all of these together because all of the denominators are 56. So we copy the 56 in the bottom and we add the numerators. So 7 plus 8 plus 112. 7 plus 8 plus 112 is 127 over 56. And this is our answer. And that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.